We try and put the politics aside and stay right down the middle, not be partisan one way or the other. You know, you can have your own personal feelings, but you can't have the behavior that reflects those feelings. You have to be the consummate professional in order to remain credible.
Welcome to the Meaning Mindset. This is Rabbi Ron Lee Paz. We're in Season 3, and we're generously supported by Dr. Jack and Beth Lynn. This is a unique conversation recorded earlier in the season, so it may be that some of the events depicted in it or discussed aren't current. Please don't mind that or forgive us for that. I think this is an extraordinary conversation. It's with Jim McDonnell. Jim McDonnell, if you don't know the name immediately, is the son of Irish immigrants, parents from Galway and from Dublin. He was raised on hard work, on integrity, on respect for all people. That's how he lived for 43 years in law enforcement, and he's now the 59th chief of the Los Angeles Police Department. That's an enormous, complicated police department that he runs. He enforces policies that will be scrutinized and critiqued in the public square, and he does so while holding the highest standards of integrity and professional excellence. The chief is, I think, a fascinating man, an interesting man, and a great conversationalist. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Maybe it'll give you some insights into what happens at the top of an organization that large, that complicated, and whose responsibilities are so great. Let's join Chief McDonnell. Chief, welcome to the Meaning Mindset podcast. It's an honor to have you here. I think about jobs with weight on shoulders. I think of yours as incredible. Just the size of the force in Los Angeles and the size of the population that you serve. I have a question just out of curiosity. Was there ever a point in your life where you had a different career path other than law enforcement?
Going way back, I was in high school and I went to a Don Bosco Technical High School in Boston, and you had the opportunity there to do college prep as well as a trade. And so I figured I couldn't go wrong going down both at the same time, but I took drafting with an eye toward being an architect. Oh. And I did that, and I felt good about it. I enjoyed it. And I remember my senior year in high school and just sitting at this drafting table thinking to myself, could I do this 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for the rest of my life? And as a 17-year-old kid, I thought I'd go out of my mind. And so I wanted to do something where every day would be a new experience, new opportunities to meet people, a changing environment, and at the end of the day, be able to say that maybe I helped someone today. And in my limited life experience at that point, the only thing I could think of that was available to me, that if you were a police officer, you could do that if you did it right. And, you know, there were probably a lot of bad examples out there where I grew up on how not to do it, but there were also some very good people working hard and protecting the community. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to follow that path, and I have ever since.
What were your parents' thoughts on this at this point in your life? You're out of college. Yeah. You're saying, I'm going down this route. Were they concerned or were they supportive at that point?
You know, they were initially concerned. They would have rather, I think, that I had gone the architecture route. Both my parents were new immigrants from Ireland, and my dad was a laborer. My mother worked, raised 3 kids, and did some side jobs just to get extra money. You know, they thought policing was dangerous, and, you know, there were better alternatives for their kids. And the more I talked to them about it, you know, they could see that I was passionate about it, and then they were very supportive.
One thing that's unique to what you do, and I'm ex-military, so I have some reference to that. There's something about sending people into harm's way that few people get to do, have that kind of responsibility on their shoulders. How does it sit with you, and how's it come to sit with you after these years, knowing that part of your job is to put guys on the road, men and women who are going to do car stops and all these points of really huge human vulnerability?
Right. No, that's a great question, and I don't think enough people think about it that way today. You know, the perspective of policing by most of the community is shaped on Hollywood, TV and movies. But what we have are people who come on the job, generally early 20s. They have whatever life experience they have up to that point. In 2019, before COVID and all the changes we saw, it took about 100 applicants to get 4 people who could make it to the academy. 3 would make it through the academy. So that's a 97% washout rate. I don't know of another profession that has that kind of rate. So I look at it that we have 6 months once somebody starts the academy to be able to give them as much as we can, all the tools they will need to be successful, survival skills as well as then skills to de-escalate situations, to be able to help people often on the worst day of their life, and to be able to be kind of the arbiter, not take sides, but to be, kind of a force that's viewed by everybody as their police department. And, sending people into harm's way is not something that I think probably anyone does lightly. Every day, I'm notified all day on the phone as far as officers being hurt. I just got one before this, a traffic collision involving some of our officers. We've had an uptick this year in officer-involved shootings, and every one of those officers are involved in a situation that is life-threatening by its very nature, and they respond to that. And some people in the community then look at that as a kind of a failure, a dark spot on our record, when in fact, we evaluate every officer-involved shooting to a degree that I don't think anybody could imagine. I can't imagine another enterprise, another profession, more critically evaluating the work being done by those in it and holding them accountable to a very high level. But when you look at when we have a critical incident like that, a critical use of force, we look at it the way we do. What it means is that they exhausted all other remedies and were put in a position where they had to use their weapon or whatever force instrument to be able to protect themselves or to protect someone else. And that takes a toll on the individual very, very much, and their family. It is a traumatic event for them, and it also has a very traumatic effect on the community also. So it's something we don't at all take lightly. But I look at, we're up 60% in officer-involved shootings for 2025, and that is right in line with the uptick we've seen in violence against police officers. Our crime rate is down, and I'm proud to say very dramatically year to date. But again, while crime is down, the level of violence being used against our officers has increased dramatically.
You're giving me all these thoughts and questions to ask you. I want to stay on the personal level, because at the end of the day, you're a guy who puts his shoes on in the morning, leaves his home, and goes out to do this difficult but important work that all of us rely on, regardless of what people have learned about police, as you say, mainly from Hollywood. You have to step into that role every day. What have been some of the most challenging leadership moments for you?
I look at just where we've been in 2025, and I started with the LAPD back on the job in this position in November of 24. And as we began 2025, we had the worst fires in the city's history, and then floods and mudslides that followed that, and then the worst budget that we've had in city's history, $1 billion deficit. We're the biggest part of the budget, so we took a major hit on that. The lack of ability to be able to hire enough people to be able to do the job the way the community deserves it to be done. And then we had the immigration enforcement actions and the unrest that followed in the downtown area as a result of that. We dealt with that for much of the summer and into the fall. And then last week we disrupted a terror attack that would have taken place on New Year's Eve at 6 locations that we were aware of. And you look at just the sheer number of major events that happened in Los Angeles in 1 year. And those are things that you would see in some other cities over the course of a 30-year career for an officer. Sure. But yet our people get out there and they move from one emergency to another. and don't ask questions, don't complain. They just get out there and they take care of business and they protect people's lives every day. The resilience that I've seen from our people is something I'm very, very proud of, but it comes at a toll. The exhaustion factor, the ability to be able to step back and look at longer term, more strategic goals has been limited in this past year because of so many different events. So I am very proud of our people. I'm very happy to be back, given the privilege to lead this organization. And I would hold the LAPD up to any police organization anywhere in the world. And I think the people of Los Angeles should be very proud of what we have here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Going back to something you said, all these struggles that your police officers have had to face and that you've had to face with your leadership team, what's the role of counseling in the police force in LA?
Yeah. Now, great question. At the end of the day, people view police as somebody who would be immune to stress, immune to exhaustion, and you just keep going like a machine. And that's not the case. We have people who are mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and do all sorts of different roles in their personal life. But when they put on the uniform or, put on the badge and come to work, then they focus on the mission at hand, which is different depending on where they work in the department. But at the end of the day, it's all about public safety in the general sense. The human impact that dealing with chronic trauma every day for a career has on somebody. I use the analogy, it's like putting a backpack on when you graduate from the academy. And each incident that you go through is putting pebbles or small rocks into that backpack. And every one of us is strong and can carry a big load, but at some point you have a breaking point. And you hope then to be able to have some kind of a strategy or a means of dealing and decompressing so that you're unloading some of these pebbles and stones along the way and not carrying it to the breaking point. And we do have an excellent psychological services section, BSS, we call it Behavioral Sciences Services. And we have a cadre of police psychologists who this is their specialty, this is their life. And they are out there every day in our divisions. We're talking to roll calls. Our officers know them. And when I came on the job in 1981, it was taboo to raise your hand and say, I need to talk to somebody. Sure. And if you were sent to BSS, it was perceived as a weakness. That is not the case now at all. And we worked very hard at getting to where we are today over the last 45 years. But we're in a place where many of our officers demand that they have access to psychological services, the ability to debrief an incident. And that, to me, is very, very healthy. And I'm hopeful that departments across the country avail themselves to that kind of help, because it is a game changer, not only for the organization and our ability to continue to do what we do, but also for the individual, the family, and everybody associated with somebody being exposed to that level of chronic stress over so many years.
You remind me of one aspect that we haven't talked about, which is your wife and kids at home, the husband and kids at home. Is there support within LAPD for the spouse and for the family?
Yeah, we do. We have a family support group that focuses primarily on those who have lost their lives while on duty or in the performance of their duty. We also have other groups then that are kind of support groups as well. And then just the friendships you develop over the years with partners and families of partners and people you come to know and love and trust. Those are strong bonds, and that's a good way of being able to share what you're dealing with, and somebody who's been through it, and people helping people, really. But you get somebody who you can talk to in a way that you might not be able to if that person didn't have a background that is similar to your own. And so we do have support for the families, but I can't say enough for the sacrifice that families make on behalf of those that wear the badge and get out there and do the job every day, because it is a team sport. When you go home, you can't just leave it all in the locker and be a normal average working man, you have dealt with things that the rest of society doesn't want to see. And I use the example that any one of us, if we saw a train crash and somebody run over, or we saw a terrible accident, or a shooting up close, that's something that is very traumatic to any human being, and many people would have nightmares and they wouldn't sleep and they'd have to get counseling, and that is half a watch for an officer out in the field, and they deal with this, and then to get the report, go to the hospital, the follow-up is done by detectives, and they move on to the next call and the next call, never knowing what the next call is going to be, but being able to roll out there. They never ask questions as to who's calling, what do they look like, what's their background. Doesn't matter. They get out there, they roll on the call, and they help whoever needs help, and they do it over and over again. And you can imagine how many times in the course of a 30, 35-year career. And so we need to, as a society, to do a better job in helping our first responders, being able to, deal and kind of mitigate some of that chronic stress that they carry around.
Yeah, I'm thinking about culture, and you're really the culture setter for the organization. And everything that you're telling me tells me of a certain culture, and part of that culture, as I hear it and understand it from friends and also in LAPD, is a sense that vulnerability is okay. That's part of your humanity too. Mm-hmm. People aren't expecting robots in service of their community. You as a force and you as a leader are saying, your men and women, come to work as men and women, do your best job, and know that you'll be supported.
Yeah, that's the message I try to get across, and as best we can, we try and do the best job to support our people as we can. The reality is, we're in an environment that is extremely litigious, one that we have come to a place in our society where police are held to a standard that some would look at and say is unrealistic. It may be, but what we do is so important to our community and our society that we have to be able to uphold that standard in order to be able to be credible and legitimate in the eyes of the people that we serve. That is a heavy weight to bear over a lot of years, but our people do it over and over again. And as I said earlier, I couldn't be more proud of the work that's being done on behalf of the community every day by the LAPD.
Yeah, it's impressive, and not only impressive in terms of what you're saying about what you intend and what you do, but also just knowing that weight is on the shoulder of the chief of police more than anybody else. But you've got a great structure in terms of LAPD's structure of leadership. And I know, having known many of these people, that you've got fantastic people around you as well. How do you deal with some of the more nationally focused stories that come from LA? Do you counsel the people within the team, listen, keep your heads down, do your jobs, don't focus on what this news station or that news station is saying about you, just know with integrity you've got to just walk forward?
Yeah, we try and put the politics aside and stay right down the middle, not be partisan one way or the other. You can have your own personal feelings, but you can't have the behavior that reflects those feelings. You have to be the consummate professional in order to remain credible and trustworthy. And trust is the currency of our profession. And so we work very hard to develop and maintain that over a long period of time. But yeah, when you have, the polarization politically that we see today in America, it is hard because our people all have their own thoughts and their feelings and are very, very strong about what they feel is a sense of right and wrong. But, they do an amazing job in not bringing that to work and not talking about whatever their beliefs are to people in the workplace, people on calls, and trying to shape anybody else's perception of a particular issue. So I feel like we've worked very hard. That is part of this culture, and that LAPD has embraced it as well as I think anywhere in the nation.
When you look forward to the future, starting now, 2026, one thing you and I know is what you just described, the polarization of society. And it doesn't seem to be getting better right now. I mean, my own feeling is we know what the problem is, and actually there is a solution. We're the solution. It's not like we have to just go, oh, no, we can't solve this one. We can solve this one on an individual and community by community basis. Do you worry about more, I'll call it global problems coming home. We're coming to the Olympics. We're coming to this year, World Cup. What's your thought about the climate right now for policing, knowing what's coming to LA?
Yeah, my frustration is in hiring and having sufficient resources to police both the World Cup and the Olympic and Paralympic Games the way I would like to see us do it. We will do it. We will be successful, but we'll have to adapt our strategies, our deployment, our collaboration with other organizations in order to be able to pull it off as well as it needs to be. And so we are able to do that, and we will do that as we go forward. But I give you an example of the stress our people are under. We 5 years ago were deployed at 10,003 sworn officers. Today we're 1,400 down from that. When we were deployed at 10,000, we had 2 officers per 1,000 population. New York and Chicago, probably the best cities by comparison. New York has 4 officers per 1,000, and Chicago has 4.3 officers per 1,000. So we have less than half of the next largest cities in America of a police to population ratio. And so our people are going hard all day, every day, and our city's geography is a lot larger than either Chicago or New York. Sure. And so we're asking an awful lot from our officers day in and day out. But we're down, as I mentioned, to almost 30-year levels that we haven't seen in 30 years. I have this year budget authority to hire 240 people. We've asked for an additional 240. We're still awaiting that. I'm hopeful we'll get it. But even if I were to get the full 480, I'm going to lose 500 to 600 this year. And so we're not keeping up with attrition. And here we are 2.5 years out from the games. And that's not where a police chief anywhere in America or the world would want to be. Just that close to the games and not having the number of people that we believe would be most helpful.
Yeah, I hear you. Concerns me for you and for us. You made me think about things that have happened in 2025 where you had military coming into cities in America. And right. I know you like me are apolitical, but there's an administration behind the decision. One question I have genuinely is when they say that the police came into this city or that city for a period of time to reduce crime, is it lasting or is that just a blip? It changes the statistic while they're there, then they leave, and crime comes back to the levels that it was?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If whether we do it with kind of a surge where we take the resources we have, or whether you look at the cities across the country that have had the National Guard or the military or additional resources sent into problem areas, if you don't address the underlying causative factors, you're dealing with symptoms. And yeah, you'll drive the symptoms down, but if you don't address the underlying causes, you're not going to solve the problem. So when you do move those resources out, you are going to see a resurgence in the crime that you had before. Unless you can leave sufficient resources there to be able to maintain any success that you've had, and few cities can do that, then yeah, it's going to be kind of a whack-a-mole type of situation, sure. Where as the crime spikes, you move additional resources, it pops up somewhere else, you move them back and you deal with that. Not a great way to be able to deal with something as important to our society as public safety.
What are some of those root causes, root problems that you think we really should have our eye on and don't?
You could start off with parenting. You'd start off with the education system, the opportunities for youth after school to be able to engage in positive activities. You look at the level of drug abuse in America, the fentanyl problem, the methamphetamine problem, and the alcohol problem, and then the prevalence of mental illness. And some of that increase in mental illness, I would say, is certainly due to the use and abuse of methamphetamine in particular. That is a drug that I wish we could do more to educate young people about, that once you try it, it's something that's going to be very detrimental to the rest of your life, however long that may be, as a result of your using the drug.
So are other agencies cooperating, or is this always just a bang your gavel on the table and say, when's somebody going to wake up and realize we have to change something? You can't just leave it to the police to solve the problem. And I'll say also to be seen to be fully responsible for the problem, because other agencies are.
Yeah. That's the frustration is the police get blamed for whatever the fallout is from dealing with societal problems that they didn't create, that they don't have a hand in shaping. But when things get to their extreme, it's the police who are called to deal with the problem. And that could be a breakdown or a dysfunction in any other institution in society. And that's just the nature of our business. I think if you want to deal effectively and not just deal with the symptoms, we need to take a big step back. And much like we haven't really seen anything like the Crime Commission in 1967, we haven't seen anything like that since then. But I would expand the scope of it to a societal wellness commission to look at not just crime and dysfunction, but how do we be the best society we can be, and bring in the experts in every field and have them be able to come up with a strategic plan that extends for 25 years. And what are the needs? Do a needs assessment. What are the needs of our society? And it would have to be broken down at least by city to be tailored and appropriately. But if it's drug abuse, if it's not being addressed with the educational system, medical access, mental health access, all of those things are things that can be helpful in reshaping a society, but they have to be funded. And they have to be incentivized to work together. And what we've seen are that they haven't been funded. And when grant money becomes available, they operate in silos and are forced to compete with each other for those grant dollars. So that's not a system that really encourages collaboration.
Yeah, I feel like your hands are tied in so many ways, and you're forced to just deal with the bleed, so to speak, the problem, rather than getting to solve the root causes. How does a society, let's say you're given all the abilities and the funds to do it, how do we address homelessness in LA effectively?
Yeah, I think you need to have case managers, sufficient number of them, and a sufficient number of available resources for housing, for addiction issues, addressing those issues, mental health issues, dealing with people who are living with a variety of dysfunctions in their family, maybe through no fault of their own, but, they're all different. So to try and address or deal with the homeless problem as a collective, I think we're not going to be successful. We need to, I think, be creative. We need to have enough people who are willing to do this type of work and enough places available, clinical settings, to be able to help people. And in some cases, people who don't want that help, to be able to help get them the help that they need as determined by somebody who has expertise in that field. We have done something, under the name of freedom, where we let people roam the streets who can't take care of themselves, who clearly are living in dysfunction. That is not a humane answer. And here we are in, I think, the greatest city in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we're dealing with these kind of issues. We're better than this, and we have so many smart people here that if we were able to put together that type of commission that I'm talking about, to do an assessment and to be able to come up with something that would have the credibility it needed to be funded, supported by both political sides of the continuum, and be able to move the ball forward in a rational way. And, what we see too often in our society politically is that people have to advocate for change, no matter what. Change for the good, change for not so good in the eyes of the residents, but change. If you advocate for what's going on, even if you have a strategic plan for 25 years and it is working, you're not going to get reelected. And that's kind of something we need to take a step back as an electorate and say, okay, what is it we're looking for? And are the people that are running the type of people who can get us to the goal line? And I don't think we've looked at it that way. It's been whatever the next shiny object is in too many cases.
Yeah, you remind me of something you said early on in the conversation about trust, which is so essential to our relationship with police and yours with us. I think the erosion of trust is going to be looked at as one of the greatest losses that we've had in this era. We don't trust what we're seeing, whether it's true or not. Is it AI? Did this person say this? Did this event happen? We're really moving into a scary place in terms of trust. We're not trustworthy of news sources anymore. Somebody tells us a story, we say, "Where did you hear that?" Rather than saying, "Where did it happen?" And that concerns me, because at the end of the day, you're on the front line of that issue of people's distrust of authority, distrust of each other, the fractured nature of a society. I don't want to get too depressed about it, because I love this city and I have faith in you and the people around you. It must make, well, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to say it must make recruitment challenging. Talk to me about recruitment. What compels people? Is it the same as compelled you those years ago to come into the police force? Is what's going on in the world changing that dynamic, that culture?
I think overall, people come into whatever profession for a variety of different reasons, but I do think people are drawn to this profession to give back, to be able to help other people, to get their reward by taking care of somebody else. And that's a noble profession, a noble reason to come into this profession. And I think we see mostly people coming in that want that. Other people come in for the security, the pension, the medical, the benefits, the pay and benefits from the job. But the reality is, if that's what you're driven by, then there's other jobs out there that pay more, that the benefits are better. If you're the best and brightest at what you do. But I think there is a special type of person that wants to do public service. And I say that public service in the best way, to be able to help other members of the public whose name you don't even know, and to go out there based on a radio call and to be able to put yourself between harm and them, just because that's what you do.
How much training is there in interpersonal skills and communication skills? Obviously in assessing, but also in diffusing.
Yeah, it's an ongoing. We have certainly hours of that in the academy, but it's a type of thing that's hard to teach in a classroom setting. You hope that a lot of people bring that to the job when they come on, just based on their growing up, their experiences dealing with other people. But we do work on it. We do train to it. We do bring in experts in the academy environment. And then we have ongoing professional development training throughout a person's career. So we continue to talk about these issues, to bring in people more knowledgeable than ourselves to talk about them. But really, the day-to-day working with people on the street during the most difficult times possible, and being able to see what works and what doesn't work, what your style is compared to maybe someone else's style, and being able to adapt your style to what might be more effective for you, and ultimately being able to help people.
Yeah. Do you remember a book called Verbal Judo? Is that still in use?
Yeah, it's probably George Thompson was the guy who wrote that, and he came to LAPD back in the 90s and put that class on for everybody in the department at the time, and there was merit to it. Basically, the term verbal judo is to not take a hit, but to brush it off to your side. Don't take things personal that people say to you and focus on you, but rather, use that verbal judo to be able to get away from the object of their attack and be able to say, "Okay, sir, but I'm here to help you. How can I help you today?" And it changes the dynamic. I think it was a good book. I think he was onto something there, but I think that's a piece of the solution. But it's really tailored to the individual, your own style, what works for you, and being able to diffuse a situation, de-escalate somebody who's potentially violent, and be able to get to a place where it resolves peacefully.
Yeah, he had great stories in that book. I'm sure you remember. I remember at one point he knocks on a door because there's a domestic dispute. And he just walks in, this was in those days, walks in the house and sits down at the dining table and opens their newspaper. And they're screaming at each other. And at some point they realize, they look over and he starts asking them about a car that's for sale. He's circling an ad in the classified section. And he completely shifts them out of their anger at each other. A lot of those are great examples. But what I found interesting about it was he was saying, don't assume that what you're seeing is what's going to happen. It may not happen. Obviously, you know that better than I do in that scenario. But one of the things I learned from him was the power of listening with your eyes and your ears, really taking in what's really happening. And in addition, ways of creating empathetic communication, a sense that you see the person as being like you, not because of the uniform, so different from you.
Right. No, I think absolutely. I think listening is probably the most important part of communication. We have a tendency, I think, as people in our profession, to be type A personalities, to be people who want to be the problem solvers, action oriented, and we tend to want to assess the situation quickly and then offer a solution or try to force a solution, when maybe the better solution long term might be just to listen and not say anything until the time is most appropriate. That's hard to do for somebody who is action oriented, but I think it's a good lesson for people that, hey, try something different and see how this works.
Yeah, there may be something that you remember also from another book. There was a book, I'm blanking on the title, but it was one of the Blink, who wrote Blink.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the things he was talking about, I think it was in that book, was the idea that you could predict how things would go in medicine in terms of which doctor was more or less likely to get sued. These university studies would look at them based on video footage of them sound on and sound off with patients, regardless of the prediction that if he went to Harvard, if he went to this place or that, Johns Hopkins, he's less likely to get sued for malpractice. It wasn't the case. It was the way he or she was engaging and looking, right, and body language said so much. I'm assuming that applies to this as well.
No, absolutely. And I think in anything we do in human interaction, like they say, it's not what you did or how you did it, it's how you left them feeling about the interaction. And much as to your example, I think it's the same for us. Showing respect, you got to show it to get it. And I think that really is a foundational aspect of being able to do this job or many other jobs.
Yeah, I love seeing LAPD at good events.
Yeah.
You know, I just love seeing the engagement between LAPD officers and kids and at parades and at public events. Just thrills me that there's that engagement, that people see that these are people who live in our communities. These are people who grew up and raised their kids as well. When I think about, obviously I'm a rabbi, so I think a little about this, spirituality, obviously. And I think I would make an assumption that most people assume that spirituality in policing is when there's a loss. That's when we get to prayer or anything like that. And I'm not suggesting you're a religious organization or that you should be. But is there any other aspect of, I'll call it blandly, spirituality that you think exists in the police force?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you're dealing with people who are exposed to the stressful incidents, the violent incidents that they are on a daily basis, the poverty, just the things that police officers see. I think that spirituality enters into it, whether on a conscious level or not, that you want people to be safe. You want them to be healthy, and you do what you can for them to get them to that state. The frustration is where you can do so little for so many because of resources, because of time, because of your role and the lack of other resources to be able to plug them into. But I do think that spirituality is very helpful to the emotional state, and certainly, somebody who focuses only on the incident and not the person, I think the response is going to be cold, uncaring. I think, as you mentioned earlier, that when we engage with people on a personal level and we can make that connection, the outcomes are generally much better.
I had a conversation with a Michigan University professor on the podcast this season, and we were talking about the value of purpose in people's lives. Right. And we know people who struggle without purpose, and a lot of that I think you see on the streets and in encounters in the city. But he was talking statistically about how people have gone through some of the great disasters that the world has known. Thinking about recently the great earthquakes in China and Japan. And they looked at the groups that had a clear sense of purpose among the survivors, people went through it, and people who didn't. and there was such a distinct difference in terms of whether they had post-traumatic stress disorder at the end of it or whether they had post-traumatic growth. What are your thoughts on that as you see it in relation to the challenges of policing? Is post-traumatic growth something you notice?
Yeah, no, I do believe it is. I think, and that's the latest way of looking at what was PTSD, but the ability to grow past the traumatic incident and maybe to even benefit by it long term. But I think you have to acknowledge it first to be able to move down that path. And, a lot of research has been put into that, and police and military, I think, have been the primary study cases in a lot of this research. And so my hope is that we can benefit from that. But we talk about post-traumatic incidents all the time and post-traumatic growth as a positive side of that. It is a work in progress, but I certainly believe that we are in a position to be able to benefit from additional research, be able to talk more, to be able to not just automatically compartmentalize an event or an experience or an incident and put it in that backpack and just move on. I think when we do that, and sometimes we feel forced to do that because of the workload, the volume, the things you're dealing with, the multitasking you're doing. But I think that we need to be probably more sensitive to the people that we work with, to do wellness checks, to just check in with people and say, hey, you were at that incident last night. That was pretty tough. You okay? How you dealing with it? What are you doing? And over time, people will check in with you as well, but also give you honest feedback on, hey, I didn't sleep last night. That kind of stayed with me because, if it's particularly issues as related to kids, kids who are abused or kids who are badly hurt or that kind of thing, and you have your own kids or your grandkids, and you can't put that away and pretend it doesn't impact you, because it does.
Yeah, you're in your second year here, back at LAPD now as the chief.
Yeah.
All the responsibility. You're, I know, responsible for carrying forward some reforms that are important to you. How's that going? Do you have is it just too difficult to get a lot of that kind of grand work, macro work done when you're busy putting out fires constantly, dealing with the day-to-day work? Or are you able to move things forward that matter to you?
No, we're definitely able to move things forward because while we deal with the granular level and the radio calls and the incidents and all of that, we're also dealing with the big picture, the department's philosophy, our mission, our core values. What is it we believe in? Who are we as an organization? What do we want others to see us as, others in the community we serve, others in the profession? And I think we've done a decent job in maintaining our standards and our image, I would say, because of the way we've stuck to our core values. And while we'll always have problems, anytime you have this many people working on these type of issues every day, you're going to run into difficulties. But it's not if you have them, it's how you deal with them when you have them. And do you learn from them? Do you hold people accountable? Do you move forward and make things better than they were before that incident? And so much like post-traumatic growth, as an organization, we try and do the best we can with post-incident growth, post-scandal growth in some cases, to be a better organization because of it.
What do you want the public to understand about the police force that they're meeting on the streets and on the freeways and everywhere else?
The police officers are just like you. They're people. It's all of our job to ensure public safety in society. Police are paid full-time to do what really is everybody's responsibility. They can't do it by themselves. They need the public support. And that has been lacking here in the past 5 to 10 years in a very serious way. When you look around this country, and I'll use the military as an example, less than 1% of our population is on active duty in the military at any given time. And we just assume that everything's going to be taken care of. What do we do to support that 1%? Are we thinking about them? Are we doing anything to benefit them? Well, much like that, our police departments across America, there's 18,000 departments. There's roughly 760,000 police officers. So when you think about that number, serving a population of 235 million people, that's less than 1/3 of 1% of the population is charged with the safety and security of everybody else. That number, the math doesn't work out. It's too small a number to be successful without the support of the greater community. So my ask is keep that in mind and realize that you've got people out here who have the best training and experience that we can give them, but we're asking them to solve the most complex problems that society can throw their way, and to be right 100% of the time. We need to be reasonable. We need to give support. We need to bring in outside resources to be helpful, people who are specialists in the things we're asking police officers to deal with on a daily basis. And I'll use mental health as an example there. Sure. If you have somebody who has had a mental break and they're acting out and they're violent in the street, if a psychologist or a psychiatrist who is very tenured were to be able to address that person, it would often take them several visits to diagnose the problem, medicine to be able to treat and stabilize the problem, and then number of follow-up visits to ensure that the person stayed stable over time. We, on the other hand, only get called when somebody is already violent or about to be violent. When we get there, we're expected to de-escalate the situation after having assessed it with no medical background or no specific psychological or psychiatric training, and to be able then to take the person into custody peacefully and be able to get them to a facility or a clinic that will be therapeutic for them. Those resources aren't there the way they should be, and our people don't have that kind of a background. Very few people in our society have that kind of a background, yet the expectations are unrealistically high that the outcomes will be what we would all hope them to be 100% of the time. So I think just the ask is, a realization of what we're asking of our people, providing them with all the support we can to ensure that they are the best that they can be, that they're trained up, they're certified, and they're put in a position where they're set up for success. And we're a long way from that right now. But my hope is that as we evolve as a society, that will become more apparent to everybody.
Chief, before we conclude, I just want to personalize this. As a rabbi, obviously a leader of a Jewish community, I'm acutely aware of the value of policing around us. I mean, we rely on it constantly. I just hope that if, God forbid, there's an incident, and there have been so many, the rise in hate crime and hate incidents, that police will be there for us. And I think we have an obligation particularly, but all of us do, to show that kind of same gratitude for the police as well. Not just to say, I want you to be there when we need you, God forbid, but we want to be there to support you. So I hope that we do that as a community, and I hope that people listening to this conversation realize, people can pause this, right? It's not fixed. They can pause and think about something you said and have conversations in their family about things that they've learned through this conversation with you. You've been really candid and so articulate. I just really appreciate you, and thank you for this time together.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I hope we meet soon.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Good night. You too. Bye-bye.
This season is produced and edited by Jonah Lee Paz. Content editing by Bronwyn Lee Paz. Digital marketing by Notebook Media. The Meaning Mindset is hosted by Rabbi Ron Lee Paz. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.